So my name is Nicole Frado Garcia. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions here at Trinity University. I'm also a proud Trinity alum, class of 2013. Kendall?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kendall Hollis. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I oversee international admission and financial aid. I'm an Associate Director of Admission, also a Trinity alum as well. And I'm really excited to get to know you guys today.
So as you've probably figured out, we are utilizing Zoom webinar, so we cannot hear or see you, but we'd encourage you to use the Q&A function both throughout the presentation and as well as at the end, where we'll prompt you to ask us any questions. We're happy to answer them. You will also find that you have the option to ask those questions anonymously if you would prefer. So we are going to dive in here. So first off, I want to just give a very general overview of how you're going to apply and when you're going to apply, because this will sort of frame up our activity today and as we talk about holistic review as well. So we're just going to cover a few basics here at the beginning. So first, you might be in the process right now of calling through a long list of colleges that you're interested in applying to. Maybe you've already crafted that list. And then you have to decide what application you want to use. So sort of our words of wisdom here for this is, as you're looking at your institutions, you'll want to also make a list of what ways you can apply to that institution. So you might actually find that most of your schools are on the Common App or are on the coalition application. And so you'll only have to select one application to apply to. I'm going to quickly also go through some of these applications so that you understand what each of them are. Apply Texas is exactly what it sounds like. It's used by a lot of Texas schools, all of our public institutions, as well as many private institutions like Trinity University. Coalition application is a group of institutions that have sort of committed to access and affordability in the college search process, and you'll see the list of coalition schools on their website. That's also another way you can apply. Common application is also exactly what it sounds like. It's the most commonly used college admissions application. Over 800 schools utilize this. And then you'll also find that some institutions have what we call institutional applications. So think places like the University of California system, where they have their own practice in which you won't be able to use that for any other institutions but that institution. So again, you'll want to look at your list of schools, and then you can sort of commit to what application you're interested in applying to. Some of these applications will open July 1st, some will open August 1st. And so you'll just want to be on the lookout for that if you are looking to begin this process sooner, possibly before your senior year begins. And so once you've decided what platform you're going to be using, you might wonder, when do I apply, right? And so you're going to hear a lot of these decision types at a lot of different institutions, but the deadlines will differ depending on your institution. So again, you'll have to make sure you're looking at your list of schools that you're applying to. And so these are specific to Trinity. We have early decision deadlines, both November 1st and February 1st, and these are binding. So you're saying to the institution, you are my top choice, and I'd love for you to accept me. This is something that Kendall will talk about a little bit later on, and you'll see that it's incorporated into the way that we review applications as well. We also have an early application deadline, which is a non-binding round, and that is a November 1st deadline as well. You can apply to as many institutions as you want early action. This is really just saying you have all your ducks in a row by November, right? You're ready to apply and ready to go. And then you also find out early, mid-December for Trinity. And then we have our regular decision deadline, February 1st. Again, if you're looking to maybe include those senior year grades or take a standardized test, or you just have found out about an institution a little bit later, you might be applying to them later. So again, we'll be talking about how these applications decisions might be affecting the review process as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole. So what you obviously signed up to learn a little bit more about today is called holistic application review. So holistic application review, what that really means is that we are looking at all aspects of the application materials. We're looking at context. It's sometimes easier to define it by what it is not as well. So another common practice is called threshold admissions. Threshold admissions is very common at large public institutions in some cases, not always. You'll also see that used very frequently outside of the United States. So a student would apply to a university, they meet certain minimum criteria, so a minimum GPA or a minimum standardized test score with a specific curriculum. And if you meet the criteria, so if you meet that threshold, then you're in. And if you do not, then you're out. What Trinity uses is holistic application review. So we're going to look at your grades in class. We're going to review your transcript materials, but we're also going to look at the context of your academic environment. We're going to look at the environment around your test scores. We're going to look at the environment and the obstacles and opportunities that you faced as you're submitting your application. So the first thing that we're going to look at when we're reviewing candidates is always kind of the academic umbrella. Ultimately, colleges and universities are academic institutions. So we have to make sure that we're setting you up for success in our classrooms, first and foremost. So when we're looking at a student's academic record, we will look at your GPA. We will look at times, Trinity does not really consider class rank in the same way as some institutions, but we will consider that information if it's provided. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at something called your academic rigor. And what that is the curriculum that you've completed and how you have taken advanced or challenging courses within your context. We're never going to penalize you for something that you don't have access to. So if your school doesn't offer certain types of curriculums, you are not going to be rated down or are reviewed differently. We're always going to look at what is available to you and how did you take advantage of the opportunities that were available to you. We're going to look at things like your academic units. How many classes did you actually take? Are there any trends in your grades? Are you a student that might not have realized year 9 mattered until you were already in year 10? And so are your grades improving? Are your grades staying really steady? Are you starting to struggle? Maybe as you start to take more challenging classes, your grades went down a little bit. So we really want to look at that context. We'll talk a little bit about testing. So at Trinity this year, and at about 1,800 colleges across the United States as of last summer, we are test optional. So one question to ask as you're looking at universities that you're considering is, are tests, standardized tests, specifically SAT or ACT, optional, or are they required? What are the average scores at that school? Do they super score? And super scoring is when a school will take the subsections of your exams and combine them for one larger score. Does the school require that your testing come from the testing service, or will they allow you to self-report it and only confirm your test scores if you choose to enroll? So those are a lot of the aspects of the academic component of your application that we're reviewing. The essay is kind of a nice bridge between the academic portion of your application and some of the more personal characteristics of your application materials. The essay, if a school requires that you submit an essay, and Trinity does, there are 2 components that they're evaluating. So one part is the content that you're sharing. Are you telling us about yourself? Are you sharing information that you can only find in that one place in your application? But it is also a writing sample that's demonstrating your ability to do college level writing. And some schools may be more writing intensive than others. So always keep in mind when you're selecting your essay and you're proofreading it, which is so very important, that you're considering that the writing sample, in addition to sharing insights into who you are as a person, is also an example of your ability to be successful in the academic coursework that the school offers.
So now we want to talk about another piece of the process and another umbrella in terms of involvement and personal characteristics. And this is more of the subjective piece of this review process. And so we're really looking in that resume, or you might see this called extracurricular section on the application, what it is that you are involved in outside of school, or what it is that you're responsible for. So this can, of course, include things like clubs and organizations that are linked both to your high school or maybe a local church or your community. It can also include work and family obligations. So this will look very different for each family unit, but possibly you have a younger sibling at home that you're responsible for picking up at their elementary school and bringing them home and making sure they're doing their homework. This could mean that you have an elderly grandparent that lives in your home and you help to make them dinner in the evenings, right? This looks very different. And so these are all pieces of your story that we're looking to learn about and don't necessarily fit into the clubs box, right, that you might be thinking of naturally. Of course, volunteering opportunities that you may have been involved in over the year, it's really great to keep record of that as you're doing that. You might have been involved in things both through the school, again, through your local community, different avenues. We want to hear about those. And even if they're shorter time commitments, maybe you volunteered at a summer camp for a week, that still counts, right? In addition to things that are ongoing and that you do throughout the year. So we love hearing about those involvements and also seeing the depth that is there for those activities. So when we're reviewing your application at Trinity, we're really looking for depth and not breadth. So in crafting that first year class, we don't need everybody to bring all of the characteristics to the table, right, to the community. We're going to have a Kendall and a Nicole, right, and several other people that together make a really interesting and diverse class. And so we don't need you to have all of those characteristics. But again, we're looking to just understand you and your story and what it is that you spent time doing the past 4 years in high school. The other component of this is the recommendation letters. So for some of you, you might be at a high school where your counselor has a really large caseload and they work with you, but also 400 other students. And so they might not be able to offer you a letter, or maybe their letter isn't really in depth because you don't really know each other. And so that's okay. We absolutely understand that that's really a changing variable depending on the high school. But something that really is insightful is that teacher recommendation, And so you might be wondering, who do I have write this, right? And we usually recommend somebody in one of your core courses and somebody that you've had more recently. So say, your junior year or possibly your senior year, if you've had them for multiple years. But again, if there is, your band instructor that you have a really strong relationship for the past 4 years, that's perfectly fine too. It's just that we tend to recommend, again, somebody in one of those core courses. And that can be, again, a really great insight both to your academic character but also your personal character as well. So like Kendall sort of mentioned about the academic umbrella, there are pieces of that you can't really change, right? You cannot go back to that 9th grade. She mentioned that you might not have realized school was really important, but this sort of engagement umbrella is where you really do have a lot of control and where you can sort of shape the process for yourself. So there is a piece of this puzzle that while you're expressing an interest in us, it's sort of reciprocal, right? It goes both ways. And so we encourage our students in the application process to conduct an interview. At some institutions, you'll find that this is required. At some institutions, you'll find that there isn't an option to interview. And so you'll really want to dig into your list of schools that you're applying to. At Trinity, we have been offering these virtually. And so they're really accessible to you no matter where you're at. And it gives you a really great platform to further, have your application come alive. We get to hear your story from your own mouth, right? But also a chance for you to ask us questions and really determine if Trinity is a good fit for you. Going on a campus visit is also incredibly helpful. Again, virtual options at many institutions right now, but also if you're able to step foot on our campuses, engage with current students, just get a lay of the land and see if you really can see yourself at that institution is really helpful, and it allows you to explore other resources that are available to you at the institution that you might not have thought about researching beforehand. And then community connections. So a lot of institutions like us that are smaller liberal arts colleges, we're really looking to have you connect with other members outside of the Office of Admissions. You're going to hear from us throughout the entire process. And so being able to connect maybe with an alum in your area or a current student who's also interested in studying history or who currently studies history at Trinity, those are really great ways, again, for you to hear sort of that authentic story about being in college. And it's something that we're looking at as we're reviewing our applicants as well.
I think as we start to move into the next portion of the presentation, where we're going to be playing a little bit of a game, and then we're going to invite you. We want you to be able to see how some of this holistic application review happens. But when we're making admissions decisions, we are trying to craft or create a class. And Nicole said it so beautifully. We need really different types of people. We need people with different interests, different backgrounds, different perspectives, so that when you come to Trinity or any small liberal arts college that's utilizing holistic review, that you have other people that you can learn from. So much of the learning on a college campus happens outside of the classroom. Obviously, you'll be learning from faculty members and taking really specialized coursework, but you're also going to go to lunch with people, join clubs and organizations with people on our campus, and you gain a lot as a person in those experiences. An example I use all the time, because my background is in music, when we're building or crafting a class, it's almost like you're putting together an orchestra. Not everyone can play the violin. You can't have an entire orchestra of violins that kind of limit the songs that you can play. So you need a little bit of everything to make it work. A soccer team, it can't be a whole team of goalies, right? You need other people to fill different places and roles. So like Nicole said, we're looking for lots of different backgrounds, lots of different perspectives so that we can craft an entire incoming class of students. With that said, so you guys are now going to kind of see a little bit behind the scenes of a mock admissions committee. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a whole group of different students with different GPAs. And as we move slide by slide, you're going to have more and more information revealed to you about each of these candidates. So that way, as you're seeing these students, you're going to get to know a little bit more about them. We're going to recommend that 3 of the students be admitted, 2 of the students be offered a place on our wait list, and 2 of the students will unfortunately not be admitted. So we're hoping that this can really inspire a lot of questions and a lot of conversation about what this process looks like, as the characteristics of each GPA, just that raw number, might shift your opinion on who should get in. Before we start with that, Nicole's going to talk a little bit about Trinity's profile, and as we're sharing that information, we're hoping that you're gaining tools that you can use as you're researching colleges. You'll start to see the information that we share with you can be a really good guide for the type of students that we're looking for in the process.
Thanks, Kendall. Yes, so you'll see here a profile for Trinity. Again, as you're looking at other institutions, you can find some of these, mission statements, values, but also demographic information, right? General GPAs, where it's located, because this really helps inform our committee, which you're now a part of for the rest of the afternoon, in terms of what decisions we are trying to make. There's a lot of points of information here. A couple that I'll point out. One is that we're a highly residential campus, right? Almost all of our students live on campus. And so When we're assessing if a student will be a strong academic fit, we're also wondering if they will be a strong social fit, right? A really good roommate. Would I want my best friend living in the residence hall with this person, right? So thinking through those questions as well, because we're a residential campus. Also thinking through some of those needs, right? Whether it's fine arts and do we need a harpist, say this year, right? Or do we need as the goalie of our soccer team graduating? So looking to see sort of what those extracurricular components are at a university. For us, 25% of our students are involved in fine arts, 25% varsity athletes, right? And so those are important things that really could weigh on the committee as we're making decisions. And also, this is a little bit more anecdotal and sort of culturally specific, but thinking about the descriptives of our students, right? What types of students really thrive at Trinity or thrive at the institution that you're looking for? And for us, it's those open-minded students, curious, right? This passion for discovery. And we can see that come through when we're reviewing an applicant or when they're meeting them in an interview. And those play into the way that we're able to review and build that class, as Kendall was mentioning.
Okay, so I'm really quickly going to walk through the admissions decisions that are going to be our options, just so we're all on the same page. So when a student applies to any university, there are three primary decisions that they can be offered. They can get in, which is always the exciting one that everyone was hoping for. They can unfortunately not be offered admission and be denied. And that's, again, primarily predicated on the student's academic information. But there's also kind of a middle ground where a student could be placed on a wait list, or we could defer a student to a later review round so that we can get more information. And for a wait list, it could be, particularly at highly selective institutions like Trinity, there are many compelling aspects of a student's application and things that we really like, but we might not have space in the class to admit every qualified candidate. So again, for today's purpose, and we'll go ahead and get started, we're going to one by one start to read off characteristics of each application, and you're going to be able to see them move right to left on the screen and fall into those different categories for, are we recommending admit? Are we recommending a wait list? Or are we unfortunately recommending a deny? If we just chose off the GPA, so if we just looked at this first blank screen, right, that just has the student's GPA information, we would admit the 4.0, the 3.8, and the 3.6, because they're the strongest students from what we know right now. And then so on and so forth. As we, again, continue to see like different pieces of information and these students are unveiled, you're going to see them shift in who we're going to recommend decisions on. And then we're going to give you guys a chance at the end to argue and disagree and to provide your thoughts and opinions on who the university should admit in this particular GPA game. So the first characteristic, one of these students is the president of their senior class. And that's the 3.6, moving up, some significant leadership and involvement in their campus community.
Exactly. So we saw it shift there a little bit. And so now, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this student plays the harp, and Trinity's only other harpist is a graduating senior, right? So how does that play into what happens? And one thing I'll note before we see where that student moves is that this is something that changes every year. It's not anything you can predict or find the institution looking for the harpist that will give you that competitive edge, right? This will be really dependent on those specific programs in an institution. So again, not really anything that you have control of, but certainly want to show you how that affects what happens next. Okay, so as you've seen, that 3.4 just moved up a little bit now into the admit category. So our next student has taken the most challenging classes at the most academically competitive high school in their city. What happens? So as you'll see here, this student was a 2.8, right? Seems very much like in a deny box was our lowest GPA, but that academic rigor, again, at a really strong high school, has bumped this student up into a possible waitlist category.
All righty, so next up, one of these applicants clearly stated Trinity was their very first choice and applied early decision. An early decision is a pretty big ask of a family. What you're saying by applying early decision and filling out that paperwork is that if you're admitted, you will enroll, and you're signing a contract that indicates that, and you're withdrawing your applications to all other schools when you're notified of your admissions decision. And it's typically at most schools, the highest admission percentage of students that are admitted will be admitted through an early decision program. Because again, that's a pretty big commitment for a student to make to a school. So let's see what happens. Very interesting. So would you have predicted when we started the game that the 3.8 has quite a precipitous fall? They're not looking so good right now, but it's all about the context, that whole picture of the application beyond just that number. So our next student is planning to major in philosophy, and the faculty members just met with the admissions team and asked for help recruiting more students to the philosophy department. Let's go ahead and see what happens here. There you go. So again, this is something that students can't really control in the process, but it is a reality of the application process. So Trinity itself, so we at Trinity do not offer program-based admissions, but at a lot of schools, if you're applying to a college or a school within the university, the major that you list can have a huge impact on your admissions decision, particularly if that program is highly selective. So while at Trinity, when you apply, we're not considering, oh, they're applying to the School of Engineering or the School of Business. We're reviewing you for admission to the university. That is a factor in holistic admissions at many schools.
Okay, so one of these students doesn't know any of their teachers very well and really had a hard time finding anybody to write a letter of recommendation. So their application came in without that. So let's see what happens to that student. All right, so that 3.4 now is bordering that line, right, with waitlist and deny. So let's look at our next candidate. So one of these students wrote an impassioned essay about how their only dream was to attend insert very famous university, and then they sent it to us here at Trinity. And this happens more often than you think that it would. Let's see where they went. That 4.0 Kindle is falling from the ranks here.
It's getting close. It's getting close to that waitlist edge. Would you have anticipated that the 4.0 would not be at the top? And it's, if you're looking at who right now, as with the information that we have available, is in our recommended admit box, and things look a little bit different than they did at the very start of the game. Just again, something I always find fun. All right. So our next candidate studied abroad for a full year and participated in an immersive language program. Let's see where they end up. All righty then. All right, a little bit of movement here that we're seeing. All right, this next candidate made a very interesting choice. So they decided to protect their GPA. I bet you can guess where this is going. And they only took one advanced academic course their senior year. Their school offers 15 advanced senior electives, but they decided that they wanted to keep that GPA really high, and so they didn't challenge themselves as compared to the rest of their peers or Trinity's expectations. Ouch. That's a fall, right? So like checking out our admit recommended decisions right now, this is not what I would have expected when we were halfway through the game. All right, let's see what happens next. Okay, so one of our candidates forgot to proofread their application. And there were so many typos that their admissions counselor could not really understand the activities that they were involved in. Let's see what happens from here.
Looks like that 3.2, right, fell a little bit now. So let's see what happens. So this student wrote an incredible, amazing essay, and I was serving as their admissions officer, and I was so impressed I shared it with all of you, our whole committee. So let's see where that student ends up.
And that really does happen. There will be really amazing essays, and we will email and message each other and be like, oh my gosh, you have to look at this one. It's so good.
Exactly. And for this candidate in particular, the 2.8, right, again, in a position that certainly we would not have expected at the beginning with only that GPA academic information at our hands. So our next student has organized and led a significant community service project at the state level. Let's see where they end up. Okay, that 3.8, making some moves as well as some other shuffling around. Let's see about our next candidate. So this student competed in and won a significant entrepreneurship competition based on their experiences working in their family business. So again, not maybe something that you're thinking, you know, an entrepreneurship club or anything, right? But very particular to a student's family obligations, right? And home environment that really can make an impact there. Okay. So in a similar vein to one of our other students, this student was worrying about their grades so much that they didn't participate in any extracurricular activities. In fact, that page is simply blank as we're reviewing this candidate.
Ouch.
Whew, that 4.0 Kindle is really moved.
Context is key, Nicole. Context is key. They wrote their essay for the wrong school. They only took one advanced class their senior year, and they participated in absolutely no extracurriculars. Things are not looking good for our 4.0 at this point. Okay, so our next candidate will be the very first person in their family to go to college. And this sometimes you'll see this on university websites being described as first generation. And that is a component of building a really diverse and broad cohort, a community on a university campus. So let's see what happens.
All right.
When you start to compare some of the characteristics of these students, some of these decisions start to make a little bit more sense. I'm looking at that 2.8 and the 3.8 respectively, and then comparing that to the 4.0, you really start to see how much some of the context matters.
Absolutely. So this next student, almost in direct opposition to the student we just talked about, actually had a parent attend Trinity, and they're really involved in our alumni association here. And so at a lot of institutions, this is going to be called legacy status, and it means different things at different institutions. At Trinity, what is important to know that when we're reviewing our applicants and you as fellow committee members here today is that legacy often means that that student is really familiar with the institution. They've possibly been on campus, they've heard stories. And so there's this tie that oftentimes lead to students ultimately enrolling in that institution. And so there's a higher opportunity that they do come. And so again, this is something that does not play any significant role in the process, especially compared to those academic contexts given, but is something that is considered at Trinity and many other institutions. So let's see which student that is and where they move to. So that 3.2, still in the wait list box, but moved a little bit.
Getting closer, getting closer. Okay, so our next candidate is the captain of their sports team, and such a talented athlete that the university coach offered them a spot on the team if they're admitted to Trinity. So let's see what happens. Whew, it's a big jump.
Mm-hmm.
3.0 it kind of is a winning combo. They're the philosophy major that we're looking to build the department, captain of their sports team, so pretty significant leadership, and our coach wants them. So would you have anticipated that the 3.0 would be in our number one admit spot and the 4.0 would be at the very bottom? I would not have. Okay, so our next student received a D, so they did not pass an advanced science course at the end of their junior year. Ouch.
Oh.
Well, they had a good run in that admit box for one slide. One of the things that can help mitigate that for students, and we're human beings, we understand that there are some subjects that are more challenging than others. And there are some classes that you might find overwhelming. That is a great opportunity to have a conversation with your admissions counselor and talk to us in advance and say, these are my grades, this is what happened. I'd like to provide you with additional information. Maybe that D happened during the student's athletic season and they were just really overwhelmed by what was going on. So the other balance to that is that, again, at every institution, the academic information comes first. So despite being a really talented athlete and of interest, that GPA does matter. So this next student did exactly what I just recommended, apparently. They attended a college fair, introduced themselves to their admissions counselor, and asked to receive additional information about the university. There you go. And that's one of those things that Nicole was mentioning earlier. Demonstrated interest is one component of the application. Engaging with the university is one aspect that a student has control over. And so definitely something, if you're interested in a school, finding ways to connect with that community and confirm from members of that community your fit can be really helpful.
Absolutely. So this next student is from West Virginia, and currently Trinity has no students enrolled from that state. So again, something certainly you cannot control in the application process and really dependent on the institution and where they're located. But for us, this is, again, something interesting and worth noting because we don't have any students from West Virginia right now. So let's see where that student moves to. All right, so that 3.4 moved up a spot, so back into the waitlist category. And so our next candidate did the exact opposite of what Kendall recommended earlier, in that they signed up for that interview with us and were presumably going to demonstrate interest, but then they changed their mind and ghosted. And so no follow-up, no information, right? They just never came. So let's see what happens to that student. All right, it was that 3.4, back down again.
My West Virginian left me sitting in Zoom all by myself for the entire interview. It was very sad. All right. So our last characteristic before we look at our final admissions decision recommendations, this student was so worried about their grades that they plagiarized their admissions essay and got caught. Yeah. So Trinity and all institutions of higher education take academic dishonesty really seriously. So this just dropped our 3.6 from the admit box, and we would not be able to offer admission to that student. And you'd be surprised, unfortunately, how frequently this happens in a selective admissions environment. So definitely take your time, do your research like you guys are doing right now, and don't don't plagiarize. That does not end well for our candidates. So let's take a look at what this group looks like at this point. So obviously we started with the 4.0 as our number one admit spot and went all the way down to the 2.8 that was not going to be offered admission. And now we finished, we've learned a little bit more about each of these candidates one by one. And right now we are recommending that we admit our 3.2, our 3.8, and our 3.0. Our wait list would be a 2.8, a 3.4, and we are not offering admission to our 4.0 or our 3.6 who plagiarized. And I think this is a really interesting combination of students. So that 3.2 who went early decision, who didn't proofread, but they did connect with their counselor. They're very familiar with Trinity. The 3.8 who has really good grades, was doing community service projects, entrepreneurship competition, and is the first person in their family to go to college. And their 3.0, who is our sports captain, who's going to play on the team, who didn't do so great in science their junior year, but is looking at philosophy, are our three candidates that we are recommending admission on. So with this information, we're going to ask you guys to jump in and share your thoughts and give us your opinions on how this happened. So we definitely want to get your perspective. Who of these students would you advocate for? What of these admissions decisions surprised you? Are there any that you'd want to change? So if you could pick, and please put this in the chat. Do you agree with the final admissions decisions? If you got to pick someone, was there a GPA that you would recommend we admit with the context that we have? Or are there any of the admitted students that you would say, I don't think so. They still didn't sway me. Maybe we should look at one of the other students to pull into that admit box. And so again, I'll give you a second to type any information you want to in the chat, share your thoughts. Oh, absolutely. We can pull that table back up for you. There you go.
Yeah, so we really would be intrigued. We experience this game in real life every year, right? And so this is not shocking to us, but we'd love to, as Kendall mentioned, know if you agree with this, if there's somebody here that you really want to advocate for a wait list or an admit or a deny that's not already in that box. We'd love to see that too. So it looks like some of you are agreeing with the overall decisions. Somebody really must identify with the 3.0. They agree very much with that admit. So some of you might be finding yourself in some of these candidates, right? And that also makes sense too. Let's see what else.
See a lot of agreement. There's a comment about the 3.2 versus the 3.8. And since they're all admitted, we don't rank our admitted students, and we also don't rank our wait list. So that's really kind of an important thing to know. Some institutions will actually put in a wait list letter, like you're the number 1 spot on our wait list, and you're the first person we're going to go to. Trinity is much more broad. We don't rank our wait list candidates, and it will all depend on what spaces at Trinity we need to fill. So for example, with today's examples, if the orchestra director called us and said, we don't have any harps, that would be a student that we would be really quick to call and see if they were still interested from the wait list. A great question from Jordan about determining which high schools are most competitive and the IB program and academic rigor. That's a great question. So this for this example, it kind of implies that we've ranked all of the high schools, and we don't do that. We will look at the context of the high school and look at the academic rigor that is available. The IB is definitely a really challenging curriculum, and we are always excited when a student has really challenged themselves academically. So if you are attending an IB school and completing the full IB, that's fantastic. And definitely something that your admissions counselor will be excited to know about The balance to that is that if you attend a school that doesn't offer IB, you're not going to be penalized for it. So we wouldn't be saying, oh, well, the student didn't do that curriculum. Maybe their school offers AP and they took a number of advanced placement classes. And so we definitely appreciate that as well. Some students go to schools that don't offer any academic rigor, really rigorous college preparatory programs. And so we are always evaluating the students within their environment. That's a great question.
There's another great question here too about how learning differences might play into the review. And that's just another component that we absolutely could have put up here on the screen, right? And something that we, if we don't know about, certainly there's no way for us to incorporate that into the review process. And so that's why we always say it's really important in that additional information box to fill that out or to conduct an interview and be able to share different components of your academic journey, why you might not have taken certain courses, or you weren't even allowed to because of XYZ, right? Having that additional context is exactly what we're talking about here. So you're spot on in terms of holistic review, that we're not looking at that in isolation. We're looking at that with the other pieces of the puzzle that we learn, but we aren't mind readers, right? And so we really encourage students to disclose as much information as they're comfortable on their application, or again in a meeting that we have or an interview, so that we have that additional information for the holistic review. Great questions.
Seeing a lot of great comments. People were feeling the 2.8 today. That challenging curriculum, really extensive language immersion. Best essay of the year. I know I would find that 2.8 very compelling as well. It seems like you guys are willing to boot out a lot of students in that admit box to give the 2.8 a spot. And again, this is a game. It's designed to illustrate kind of aspects of the process. At Trinity, it is not a situation where we would be like, oh, well, nope, that's the cutoff. We can't admit anymore. So I could see a circumstance where both Nicole or myself would be fiercely advocating for the 2.8 if they were one of our students and had engaged with us in that way. And there were all of those characteristics. But yeah, Gavin had a point about could the 2.8 and 3.0 switch depending on the student, what the university is looking for this year. And that is absolutely something. The schools will look at what are their priorities, what spaces are they needing to fill as they're making those decisions.